Welcome to the Momnesia podcast, a podcast for moms where we share the stories we want to remember and the ones we wish we could forget. We're your hosts, Julie Short and Sarah McLaughlin. Happy Momnesia Monday.
Yeah, happy Monday. I like that.
Yeah, it's a new thing.
Yeah.
I just came up with it.
You're so clever.
I am.
Yeah.
How was your weekend?
Oh, girl, it was good. It was busy.
You were posting like a champ this weekend.
I know.
You had so many gigs.
I know. They were just like all really unique, kind of fun things and things I was excited to get to do. So I wanted to post each of them.
What was the thing at the airport?
Okay, so last week was Indy Jazz Fest.
Cool.
It's an awesome. We've been a part of the Jazz Fest in different ways, both playing or supporting it in some role. And this was like kind of a sideshow to the Jazz Fest because there's a promoter I work with that books at the Indianapolis Airport. And you know that the Indy Airport has been voted best airport by all kinds of magazines.
It is the best airport.
Yeah,
I mean, you get through those lines like in no time flat. I love the Indy
it's
Airport.
like they support unique non-franchised places. I mean, some of them are
there.
Yeah. And it's really beautiful and the art's beautiful. And so one of the things they do is bring in live music for different weeks. Like on race day weekend, I played, I think maybe for a few hours in the afternoon so that people that came into Indy would kind of have live music greeting them and feel welcome to the city. And
do they make you play country when that happens? I guess, never mind. Indy 500. It's not NASCAR, people. Come on.
This was Indy Jazz Fest week, so they had a week of different types of jazz, and we did kind of a jazz pop thing, my brother and I. So we did that while people were flying into town.
Hey, Steven.
Yep. And then the next day, the kids had 3 birthday parties. It was very busy.
Whoa.
And I played at this country band I'm a part of, When Country Went Pop. We played at the Boone County Flavor Fest.
That looked like so much fun.
It was so much fun. The night was amazing.
Did I see Anna Hodge there too?
Yes, from Atlanta Story. She plays fiddle. And it's like everybody kind of does their thing, but with the country slant to it, which is super fun. It's a 90s country group. Both of those gigs were on Friday afternoon and then Friday night. And then Saturday, I went to a retreat all day. It was just a busy weekend and finished it out singing at the IMA, the art museum for...
Oh, Indianapolis Art Museum.
Yes.
So now called Newfields.
Newfields. Yes. It's gorgeous. I mean, the flowers right as you're pulling up, the landscaping at the front, every building. But this was a 40th wedding anniversary dinner party.
It was someone's anniversary dinner?
Yes. I mean, it was nicer than
ooh la la.
Most, if not all, weddings I've been to. It was beautiful. The flowers were beautiful. And they had it in the Deer's Ink Pavilion.
Wow.
And they had foie gras. Have you ever had that?
I have not. I don't even know how to say that. It is
a French, I don't know exactly what. It's like,
isn't it
it's controversial.
Pate?
Yeah. It's like thing? They overfeed ducks to get this certain duck liver meat type thing.
Okay.
It wasn't my favorite, but as my table mate reminded me, this innocent duck already spared his life for you. So I mean, you can throw it away or you can try it and be grateful. I did. I was not grateful that much because I hated it.
Oh my
but
goodness.
It was a beautiful spread of food and people. And I have to tell you, Julie, I did post those pictures. But there's always a story behind the pictures, right?
There is. I mean, you looked gorgeous. I loved that
dress.
Thank
you.
Very glam.
I was given the dress by the promoter to wear for the event.
Nice.
And a dressing room. And even the chef asked if I had any dietary restrictions. I felt very like, oh my goodness, this is so lovely.
So what's the story behind the story then?
As I went home, I got just completely swallowed up by doubt. I arrived at the gig. I say gig, that sounds a little, I mean, it's a gig, but, arrived there and was excited and learned which is fine. Everybody has kind of a vision for it. I learned that I needed to kind of work the room and walk in between the tables. And I thought, okay, well, I walk, I sing. Surely I can do those things together.
As long as you weren't chewing gum.
Right. It wasn't chewing gum, wasn't patting my head, rubbing my belly, any of those other things. But I did have a misfire and forgot a few words. Now, is that the end of the world? No, it's not. Anybody who's a musician knows, or gives a speech, sometimes you trip up over your words. It happens. But it was like this little thing became the biggest thing in the world. I was thinking, if I would have been invited to do any of these concerts 5 years ago, 10 years ago, I would have thought, oh my gosh, if I can do that thing, I'll be so thankful and content.
I would have arrived.
I would have arrived. And yet here we are wishing for something else, or that I was someone else, because I just ended up feeling like this is your one thing you were asked to do. This is your one thing you do, and you messed it up. And should you even be doing this? You don't look the part. You don't drive a nice enough car to be in this place. It just had grown. And thankfully I have really dear friends. I was on Marco Polo with a couple friends who I talked to on my way there and said, yeah, I'm doing this event tonight. And they'd said, okay, let us know how it goes. Well, on the way home, I said, I just wanted to crawl in a hole and die, because those voices are just like a shadow away from grabbing me and making me feel completely ill-equipped for my task. And one friend was like, okay, you know what? Nobody probably received it at the level you received it, for starters. If they noticed it this big. I'm holding my fingers about an inch apart for you listeners.
You are.
And you let it grow and fill your mind, and then it filled your car, and then it filled your house by the time you got home. And it did. And the other friend said, you know what? I watched an Eagles special one time, and Don Henley forgot the words to his own song that Don Henley wrote. And Beyonce's forgot the words. And I'm sorry, but you're not better than Beyonce or Don Henley. That's the human experience.
Yeah.
So my friends kind of talked me off the ledge, but it's just kind of, I say all that to be like, I posted those fun pictures, and that was definitely part of it. But the picture is only a small snapshot to the highlight reel, because I still left there feeling small.
Yeah.
Which is too bad. And then I woke up the next day and was like, it's okay. I tell my kids all the time, yeah, you're going to miss a note. You're going to miss a pitch, whatever it is. And like, life goes on. It's fine. So
learning how to get up from those places is important to do.
Yeah. But we all need to just find that ability to kind of get back on the horse, and also know, like, I went home to my kind of the most important things in life. Like I can lay my head on the pillow, feel good about just the big things in life, like relationships and all that kind of stuff. And that sounds a little cliched, but it was like, is this bringing me joy to replay this thing? No. Is it changing it? No. Can I learn from it? Maybe. So let's just go for that one.
Yeah. And as Enneagram 4s, they are usually kind of past facing. So I know you probably tend to replay those things over and over. The
rumination was just ruthless. Yeah.
And if you can't find those at the beginning and find a way to stop it, it can then just overpower you. So I'm so glad that you were able to have those friends that were able to kind of say, okay, let's stop.
Right.
Let's take a deep breath.
Right.
And put an end to that tape, because if you don't have that, it can just carry with you for not just 24 hours. It could carry with you for a while.
Oh yeah.
And if you allow all those voices to just pile on top of each other.
Right. And I think I'm going to make a shirt too that says, "You're not Beyonce, get over it."
I'll buy one. I'll buy a t-shirt like that.
Yeah. How are you doing for a little catch up? You got anything cool on the radar?
Yeah, I am super excited. We probably talked about this around Christmas time, but I think we've mentioned we have tried to move away from buying lots of things for Christmas and birthday. Well, the kids had birthdays this summer, and one of the things that Mary Kate wanted was to go see a Broadway show, and she wanted to see Dear Evan Hansen. And
Cool.
we are going to be going to Columbus to see that. I'm a little nervous because I know it deals with difficult subject matter.
Okay. I don't know much about that musical.
In it, one of the main characters early on commits suicide.
Okay.
And it is then the story after that the musical takes place.
Okay.
So we've talked about it. I looked it up.
Mm-hmm.
What age? I think she's a little young for it, but I think we also do a good job of talking through those things in our household. Yeah. And I'm really excited. I'm excited for us to have that time together, just us driving over. The boys are going to stay home.
Okay.
And just kind of have that afternoon together in Columbus. So we're excited.
So how did she pick that one? You guys play the music at home or?
Yeah. I mean, I think we listened to a Spotify station of Broadway hits, and that one kept coming up. They've got a few really great songs. Ben Platt is the main star of the show, and I mean, he's amazing. Yeah. So I think we just grasped onto those few songs, and then we're like, oh, what is this one? Oh, this is Dear Evan Hansen. Oh, let's listen to this more. And it won, Tony's. It was like Best Musical a few years ago. So I'd kind of seen some of the more of the promotional stuff than actually listening to the show. So we're excited. When you go to a Broadway show, do you like to know the music ahead of time, or do you like to go and listen to it for the first time there?
Well, I don't know if you'll be shocked by this because a lot of people in my life are. I'm not a big musical person. Like I didn't grow up going to them or really knowing the music from them. So this is kind of later in life. Am I like, oh, I actually do like this experience. So I don't have a lot of experience with that. I did go to see Waitress twice on Broadway. Oh my gosh, I loved it so much. And I knew the music going in both times. Okay. And I remember thinking this would have been a totally different experience if I didn't know the music. I was really glad I did. So, and same thing with Hamilton. I'm going to make sure that none of my kids hear this part. We're hoping to, because they're big listeners and all.
Yeah, they're huge fans of the
totally
podcast.
Our demographic. Jane and Willow at 4, they're like, oh, yes, that self-actualization stuff, Mom. So I want to take them to Hamilton. And it's so good, but it's so heady that I thought, I have to understand this to even see it. And I was thinking, surely you'd want to know the music going in. I mean, what about you?
So, Mary Kate, once again, when we went to see Hamilton, she really only likes listening to like the first few songs. And she's afterwards, when we saw the whole thing, she's like, I really want to listen to the whole thing now. I like all of these songs. And I think you can like it without even really understanding it. Colin, I think, is the one that influenced me the most in this area. So Colin is obsessed with the Broadway musical Rent. And so when we first started dating, it was like his mission. Okay, you must listen to this soundtrack, and then I'm going to take you to this show. Okay. So he made me listen to it. I was not like, I think sometimes it's hard to get into a Broadway show.
You don't know the context.
Don't know the context. Yeah. And so just like being in his car listening to it, I was kind of like, okay, this is great. But then we went to see it and I loved it.
It came alive.
It came alive. And then now I love to listen to it. And so he was kind of, like I said, the spark that got us going on this Broadway kick. He loves Broadway.
Okay.
And then his family, my aunt and uncle, Marcia and Craig, they have tickets here in Indy to the Broadway series. And a lot of times they give us the tickets, especially if it's a kid-friendly one. So like Wizard of Oz, Little Mermaid, some things like that, Cinderella. Yeah. So Mary Kate, that's kind of our thing. Colin takes them to sporting events. I take Mary Kate to Broadway shows.
Even though he's the real musical buff.
Let me take you back. He likes Rent a lot. He's really kind of obsessed with it. Okay. So he's the one that got me started on that kick. And then he just kind of stayed right back there. He's a 4. He's nostalgic. He wants to look backwards. I want to look forwards.
Okay. So when you are like, let's have a movie night at home, let's say it's just you and Colin. We're going to watch a movie. Do you want to watch something you've already seen?
Oh, girl, I want to watch Harry Potter all the time.
Okay.
I want to watch it nonstop. That's what I always want to go to. And he wants to watch new stuff.
Oh, so we
flip in that instance. So like 8s typically want to have things that make you feel safe and secure. So like I order the same food at restaurants. It's very kind of ritualistic, I believe. Maybe it's not all 8.
I don't know.
It's just me. But I did see one of those funny memes that was like, yeah, 8s want to watch the same movie over and over again. And it's so true.
But I want to do that too as a 4. I'm like, I don't want to watch a new one and I don't want to watch a serious one. I only want funny stuff.
Oh, yeah.
But that's because I'm a deep feeler and I'm normally feeled out by the end of the day.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, so Dear Evan Hansen, I don't really know the story, obviously, and I don't really know the music, obviously, but...
Do you want me to sing it all for you right now? Because I could do that.
There's probably room on the thumb drive. So here at Grace, where we record the podcast, they have used songs from the show in certain services, and I found them very...
Dear Evan Hansen?
Yeah. Huh. They've had there's one song, I can't even tell you the name, but it's like 9 different people came out on the stage and sang this song that was very evocative and powerful. And I didn't even know what it was from or what the story was. Yeah. So yeah, that's awesome. I can't wait to hear about it.
I know. I'll have more feedback because like I said, I've just been listening to it on Spotify. So yeah, it's going to be, I'm sure, much more impactful when you actually see it.
Absolutely.
On the stage.
Okay, so I'm gonna tie this in because we're talking a lot about Enneagram stuff and we're talking about 4s.
Yes, I have so many 4s in my life.
I know. So do I. And you'll see why we're fighting over this one in a second. Our next guest is a 4. She is
a 4-wing 3.
A 4-wing 3, and the way we talked about her on our last podcast, kind of gave you a heads up that she was coming. Because we said she was a force and this entrepreneur. And Julie, why don't you take over how you decided to talk with her about coming on as a guest?
Yeah, so we connected through a mutual friend of the podcast. And she's like, you need to check out Jen. So I started stalking her on social media. And I was like, this girl knows her stuff. And so we just met for drinks. And I really feel like it was like an orchestrated type of thing because we have so much in common, are kind of going through similar life circumstances right now. And I also feel like she is so wise and everything she says, I just want to like soak up like a sponge. So I was like, okay.
Yeah.
Jen, we got to get her. We got to get her on this podcast. Yeah. And thankfully she said yes. So I'm so excited to have her with us tonight.
Yeah. Well, you guys will hear a lot more about her. Let's go get her. Are you doing the intro?
I'll do the intro.
She was my friend first.
You can do it if you like.
You can fight over me. I love it.
Please.
Fight. We are so excited. We're so excited. In fact, we are fighting over who gets to do this next intro. And I'm an 8, so I win.
So she thinks.
We are so excited to have Jen Petro on the show with us today. And both of us know Jen, but from different...
Right, and I knew her first.
You did. You knew her first. But it was through some networking with the podcast. I met Lindsay Chepkema, and she said, you need to check out Jen Petro. I started stalking her on Instagram until I convinced her to meet me for drinks. And now we're best friends, Sarah. We're best friends.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
She told me I'm her favorite.
Well, Jen, welcome to Momnesia. We are so honored that you were spending time with us today. You are an amazing businesswoman, small business owner, a creative, a writer, so many great things to describe you, but we want to hear directly from you. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us your mom stats, both your personal and professional life.
Love it. Well, thanks for having me. I love Momnesia. I love you guys both. Okay, mom stats. So I have 3 not so littles. That's what I call them. I used to always say my littles. But
Right.
I call them not so little.
Yeah.
So I have an 8th grader, a 4th grader, and a 3rd grader, which is bonkers. Boy, girl, and married to a musician turned lawyer. I love to say.
That is a creative
I'm
turn.
still shocked
Yeah.
by that.
Yeah.
And we live in Fishers. Yeah. So those are my mom's stats.
Awesome. And tell us a little bit about your professional life as well.
So I am a writer and I own a small business here in Fishers, and it is called DropLeaf Communications. So it's a marketing communications firm. So we do everything from branding to lots of copy, design, websites, all that fun stuff for companies, big and small. Love it.
Yes. And it's dropleaf.co, correct?
It is. Very good.
Yes. Make sure to
you.
check her out. I know
Yeah.
you said there's some kind of story with the leaf itself.
Oh, I think I remember. Because wasn't it like
Oh, you
not
are
ginkgo
better. You
or
little.
was that what it was?
Yes, you guys have
Yeah.
a
He's
good
showing
memory.
off.
So should I
Yeah.
tell?
Yes. Tell
Okay,
us.
So I'll give you the short version. So I was on campus at IU. I can't remember if I was undergrad or grad, but it doesn't matter. Anyway, I'm walking to class. You know, you're always like in a daze. You're so exhausted. And you're like trucking across campus. And I noticed it was like Twilight Zone. Everybody had stopped moving. Like literally, cars had pulled over. Everybody had stopped walking, and they were all staring in the same direction. I'm like, okay, the world is ending. Like, what is happening right now? And I crested this little hill, and when I got to the top of it, I saw this huge tree. I didn't know it was a ginkgo tree at the time, but had these giant golden leaves, and it literally went from being full of leaves to having no leaves in like 2 minutes flat. Like it
Wow.
literally just let go. They do this. So only certain varieties, I don't remember if it's like the male variety or the female, or I don't remember the difference,
Yeah.
but certain ginkgo trees will
I
let
didn't even
go.
know trees had
I
male
me
and
either.
female.
I know.
You
they
have to
do.
look underneath and see
Lift
under
up the
the skirt.
branch.
how dropped are we. Okay.
So I love that. So anyway, it was just this like glorious sight. Like I'd never seen anything like it. It was startling. It was beautiful. And literally everybody had stopped to stare at this thing. And so it just was this moment that always sort of stuck in my mind, this beautiful moment that was so striking. And so when I wanted to start a communications company, that came to mind instantly. And just that idea of how can we create communications that are going to literally stop people in their tracks.
That's cool.
Love
Yeah.
that.
So
I do too.
I'm obsessed with ginkgo leaves. I
Yeah.
have stuff all over my house.
I think I remember you saying when we talked about it, ginkgo was kind of a tricky
Yeah.
one to throw out there because how will people spell it?
Yeah, I was going to use that in the name
Yeah.
originally, and I tested it just with, friends and family, and nobody could
Yeah.
spell it because it's
Yeah.
ginkgo. It's weird. There's a G after
Oh,
the K.
yeah.
See?
Ooh,
I would
Did you
not know that.
Yep. So I went with DropLeaf.
Yeah.
So people
yeah.
think I own a table company, but it's fine.
Oh, that never crossed my mind. Okay, yeah.
Now it does. Yeah.
And you also have a kind of a side hustle of your own.
I do.
And I'm excited about it because I'm going to be taking your course.
I'm so excited. to
That
have
is
you
so
there.
exciting.
Yeah. So
Tell us about your side gig to 6 figures.
Sure. So it was 2 years ago, I think, that I sat down with a coach of mine, a mastermind coach, and I talked about what I did in my business. And then I said, just as a side note, I said, I spend so much time every week sitting across the table from women who want to start businesses of their own. And they just have the passion for it, but they're terrified. They don't know where to start. They don't know how to do it. They're overwhelmed. And so literally I found myself having coffee every week. In fact, one week my husband was like, are you even working anymore? Are you just having coffee with women all the time who want to have, start a business? And so I talked to my coach about it. She was like, you have to do something with this because it so fills you up. And so I started a course, a 12-week course just for women 2 years ago. I've taught it 3 times. I'm going to teach it again next week. It starts.
Yay.
Very cool.
And so, yeah, it's so fun. We just go step by step and walk women through the basics of how to be an entrepreneur, how to start a business, how to grow a business, how to market a business. And it's a blast. I love it.
I am so excited. I can't
Yeah, that's
wait.
awesome.
Yeah, you should.
Congrats.
It'll be fun.
We have brought you here for a reason, Missy. We want to hear some stories. We want to hear a story you want to remember and one you wish you could forget. Is there a certain place that you'd like to start?
Sure. So just to make things tricky on you, I'm going to mix it up a little bit. Instead of a story that I want to forget, I would love to share about stories that I forgot.
Oh, now how are you going to do that?
That's going to be possible.
I have to back up a little bit. So it was 2013, and my husband was at a law firm working as an attorney and lost his job unexpectedly. It just happened. We had no idea it was coming. And it was super, as you can imagine, just turned our world upside down. And from there, he spiraled into a really dark depression, which neither one of us had ever, we had no experience with depression. We had never walked alongside someone, talked with someone who had gone through it. Like, we literally were so ignorant about what.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
We didn't even know what was happening. I wouldn't have even told you that what was happening for a long time. We couldn't even label it. We just knew something was wrong. And so that went on for a little while, and it just was slowly progressing. And again, we didn't even know what to call it.
So how did you know what to call it?
I don't even remember at what moment we labeled it. Honestly, I don't even remember. See, I forgot.
Yeah.
But we just knew something was really wrong. But really, before we even had time to label it and figure out what to do, he was diagnosed with metastatic melanoma, which is very grim prognosis, super, super grim. And so that was on top of all this stuff that was already going on. Oh my
gosh.
And it was just such a bizarre, you never expect something like that to come along. And when it does, everything stops, like literally, right?
Right.
So here we are in this giant mess. But fast forward, it is a long story. So the short version is, if you fast forward about 7 months from his initial diagnosis and many second opinions, so I think we had 5 opinions, we found out about 8 months later that he had been overdiagnosed. So he had never been dying of melanoma.
What?
He was completely misdiagnosed. He had stage 1, which is like a 95% survival. Lots of people have it. It's really not,
the second, third, fourth
they
opinions.
all confirmed that he had metastatic melanoma.
Oh my gosh.
So, we were preparing for the worst. We literally spent 8 months, literally preparing for him to not be around. It was insane. And so even once we got the news that it was only stage 1 and he was cancer-free, at that point he was totally cancer-free and needed no further treatment. And we got that news about 2 weeks before he would have gone into a surgery and a radical treatment that would have rendered him in bed every day. So this was so confusing.
Yes.
Okay.
How did you even trust?
My hand is raised.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So was it the 5th opinion and the doctor said,
yeah, it was in Michigan. It was a totally different hospital system. And they said, we think everyone's wrong. We think he's been completely misdiagnosed. And it does happen.
Right.
So there's some science behind why there was a mix up. There's just the way that cells in your lymph nodes take up the stain in a way that look like melanoma, some people. And so anyway, we still didn't believe it, because when we went back to
it'd be so hard to
the
trust.
local hospital, they were like, no, Michigan's wrong. He's a ticking time bomb. We're like, oh my gosh. And so it was just an awful time.
Yes.
And so even when we finally embraced the news that he wasn't dying of cancer, the depression issue was still there.
right.
And, it's interesting when I think about it now, and when I talk to people about it now, this is going to sound weird, because both of those things are terrible things that nobody should have to go through, either depression or cancer. But in a way, the cancer was easier to handle because we knew what we were supposed to do.
Right.
And it was such an outward, people knew what was going on. It was easy to talk about. Not easy to talk about, but it was a very visible thing. And so people rallied,
Right.
like people at our church and our friends. It's like, okay, we had to GoFundMe, and, all these things were happening because it's such an obvious thing that people know how to surround you and take care of you.
Right.
But depression is such an invisible crisis. And it's so much harder to talk about, especially this was several years ago. It's getting better, right? People
Right.
are way better now, I think, about talking about it and rallying. But it's like this invisible crisis. That's the only label I can think of for it.
Right.
So once the cancer thing was behind us, we still had this big mess. But nobody knew, or even the people that knew didn't know how to love us or support us through it. So it's just interesting how I think it almost felt harder than the melanoma, even though that was way more of a dire consequence.
So when he was diagnosed the final time as stage 1, then what did you have to do to get the cancer behind you? What did that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't think we had a clue what to do, because we were still in such a dark, it was such a dark place. He was still struggling emotionally in such a big way. Even just reeling from what had just happened on top of everything else.
Thinking you're about to die.
Oh my gosh. And so really that's what I said I don't remember, because when I look back to about a 3-year period, I don't remember so many things. Like my kids will talk about, oh yeah, that Christmas or that birthday. And I'm like, I have no recollection, which I think is creepy, but kind of fascinating.
So how old were your kids at that time?
So, when he lost his job, they would have been 7, 4, and 1-ish. I'm so bad at figuring that out on the spot, but they were little.
Yeah.
They were little. And so they don't have much recollection of that time, thankfully. at all. And so, in fact, can I jump to the story I want to remember? But we can go back and
you can do whatever you want.
We can come back and talk about
your world. We're living in it.
But the story that I love to remember and I want to always remember is, there was so much, once we started coming out of the cave, as I like to call it, like this dark period, right? It was the guilt set in at that point of just like, oh my gosh, what have the last couple of years been like for our kids, right? Not that they saw anything super traumatic or experienced anything super traumatic, because I think we did a really good job of shielding them from a lot. But I also know that neither one of us were functioning at our highest and best, right? Because we were totally in survival mode. And so there was a lot of guilt about that. And I remember asking one of my kiddos, my oldest kiddo, I didn't want to ask him a leading question. So I asked him a really benign question. And it was something like, what's been fun around here lately? Or like, what do you like about being in our family? Or just a couple of questions like that, just to kind of see what he would say. And I was just waiting for hard stuff to come out.
Yeah.
And he immediately, like super bubbly, like, I love being part of our family. And he starts rattling off all of these amazing, fun things that he had loved recently. And it was little stuff, right? And it was I just felt like there was such redemption in that moment of just that reminder of like, okay, like God's got them. And not only that, but to kids, I think the little stuff is so meaningful. And in my mind, like we hadn't gone to Disney and we hadn't like, I don't know, just some of those, there were lots of like events and things I wanted to do with them, but it was such a survival mode that I couldn't.
Right.
Yeah.
But it was like the little stuff, like when we did that craft or when we, blah, 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 played that game and I love this or I love that. And I thought, okay, like it was just such a moment of redemption and peace that I want to always remember, because I felt like instantly it redeemed in my mind, or at least put my mommy heart at ease.
Yeah.
The fact that I didn't permanently scar them. It'll come out in their 30s in therapy, but for now, they're okay.
For now, it's a gift.
It was.
And you just need to hold on to that gift.
Yeah. So glad you heard them articulate it, thought to ask it, and that you remember.
Yes.
You were aware of it.
Yeah. Yeah, because that mommy guilt stuff, it'll eat you alive. So
Totally does.
For sure.
So many questions about the depression. And I know that any of this stuff that you don't want to talk about, you are free.
Absolutely.
You have a free pass. But so you're going into this depression and you're also dealing with the medical things. What were the medical things a precursor? Were there things going on in his body that kind of triggered this? Or like, do you guys know? Or is it just totally, like you said, you just don't even remember how?
Yeah. Yeah, we don't know. I mean, there's never been a definitive, but we both suspect that, being the doctors that we aren't,
Right.
We do suspect that, he was wrecked. I think when you have depression, again, I'm not a doctor, but like your whole body just isn't functioning right. Like I feel like your immune system's got to be compromised. Again, I have no idea what I'm talking about, but like we do.
What does Google say?
I know,
Right.
We do both suspect that. And there is a lot of research that, people think of the sun when they think of melanoma, but there is a lot of research that says it's immune related more so than the sun. And he certainly was not doing well physically. Like there's just no way. And so both of us are convinced that those were interrelated, even though no doctor ever told us that, but
yeah,
that's our theory.
So what
Sounds like a good
was
theory.
the turning point from the depression?
I think depression is one of those things that it will always be there.
Sure.
It will always be something that he has to battle. But, oh man, so many good things. Just learning how to catch it early. Like learning, like if he starts to feel down, he knows what he needs to do.
Okay.
He needs to get outside. He needs to exercise. He needs to be with people. Like he knows the things now that he needs to do. And also something that we talk a lot about, both of us, is EMDR therapy, because it was amazing. We tell everyone we know, like if you've never heard of EMDR therapy, look it up.
Yeah.
It was a game changer for him.
Can you tell us,
tell people about
for
it.
people that don't know? Yeah, give us a
such
snapshot.
a nerd about it. So it stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. And it is a type of therapy that a therapist will use either light or sound to stimulate your amygdala while they're doing talk therapy with you. So you're totally awake. It's not creepy. You're not like, out of it or something.
Right.
But really, it's just like talk therapy. They're going to walk you through questions and things like that while you're doing this kind of stimulation. So for our therapist, he uses sound. So you wear headphones and there's a beep that goes from one side. So it's called bilateral stimulation. So it will go from one side of your head to the other. And it literally like wakes up your amygdala, and it is a way of just reprocessing. It unlocks trauma. It unlocks things that maybe you've repressed. I mean, it doesn't always have to be like, people talk about big T trauma and little T trauma. For Paul, it wasn't like he had some terrible big T trauma. It can be little stuff, or it can just be emotions that are repressed. It can be all kinds of things. But it is the number one like approved treatment for PTSD. They use it all the time with veterans. And I mean, I've met so many people since what we've gone through have just gotten so much healing from EMDR. So I'm a huge fan.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And I think, you just kind of learn. I'm sure everyone's different, but just learning what triggers you have or what to do when you start feeling it creeping in. And I think therapy, oh man, I mean, we are both huge therapy. I think everybody should have therapy.
Yeah.
So having a therapist that you trust, and we went through many before we found one who was a good fit and that we really felt good about. So I think that's really important too. Sometimes people try one person and they're like, I hate therapy. It didn't work. It's like, no, try somebody else, you know? So anyway, it's been a journey, but I think it's also taught us a lot about how to support other people who are going through crisis, because I think I didn't know what I was doing before this happened. I don't think I was good at walking alongside other people through crisis, but I've learned a lot about that. So
what are some things that you've learned? Or what would you tell people to do if they have a friend or family member who is struggling with depression and may not know what to ask for? Now, obviously, every situation is unique, but what was really helpful for you guys?
Oh, I love that question. I think just showing up. I know that sounds cliche, but I think so often people disappear or they just don't do anything because they don't know what the right thing to do is. And I think that's the camp I fell into before all this happened, is I would be nervous about doing the wrong thing, so I would do nothing. I think just showing up. Like I remember we had people from our church who would just show up at the door with like some fruit or something random. Like it didn't have to be fancy.
Speaks.
Like, yeah, totally. Food's my love language. So just showing up, even if it's a text. I think oftentimes when people have depression, they withdraw, right? They totally withdraw. And just, you have to chase them down a little bit and not take it personally if they don't respond to your text message. Like they're not well. Like you have to chase people down. I know that sounds probably like harsh, but not to let them disappear.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's the number one. And I say this selfishly, but to support their spouse. Like that was not an easy road. And I think sometimes people also don't realize how hard it is on the other person.
And I feel like you don't hear about men suffering from depression.
Right.
I don't know if it's just not as easy to talk about. Or maybe I just talk to women more often, which is true. And I hear about women suffering from depression. But, you know, my husband has also suffered from depression.
Yeah, and mine too.
And you just don't, it's just not talked about as often.
No.
I don't think.
We were in a small group for a while. And I mean, we were in it for quite some time before anyone would speak up. And actually the men never spoke up, but through the women in the group came to find out that like 4 out of 5 of the men in the group had diagnosed mental illness or struggles. And here we are in a small group where, you know, it should be a safe space, and nobody wanted to talk about it.
Right. Or maybe wanted to and didn't know how. Yeah. All of that.
Good point. Yeah.
Yeah.
So how did you go about finding this counselor that worked really well for you too? Because I know that can sometimes be a block from people finding the help that they need. Like you said, they do one and then they're done. And EMDR worked for you. Was that because you found a counselor that suggested that, or you were looking for someone who does EMDR?
It's actually, it's going to sound like a totally bonkers story. That's why I laughed.
We like bonkers here.
So we went through a couple counselors here locally, well-intentioned, not a good fit.
Tell us which ones.
I know, right? Do you want their names and address?
Yeah.
And what they looked like too.
Right. So we did that, and literally I was in a mastermind, a national mastermind. So nobody was local. I was the only person here, and a woman in the group who I'd gotten to know a little bit and shared just a little bit about what was going on at our house. She literally called me up one day and she said, I have a counselor for you, but he's in Tennessee. And I'm like, what? Like,
he's out of my network, girl.
Right.
But the craziest, coolest part of the story. So actually, at first I blew her off. I was like, okay, that's just nuts. And who's got time for that? But I looked him up and there wasn't anything about him. Like, Paul doesn't have some very specific problem or, that only this guy, like, he was just a general therapy, a general therapist and whatever. So there's nothing notable about him other than I knew as soon as I pulled it.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is what we're supposed to do, which I can't tell you why. Like, I just felt like this is what's supposed to happen. And that's exactly what she said. She called me. She said, I know this is crazy, but I think this is who you're supposed to go see. And so the craziest part of the story is he worked out of a big facility in Nashville, Tennessee. It was like a voluntary inpatient, very cool program for men who struggle with depression and anxiety and things like that. And I called and it was like $30,000 for 3 weeks or something. I'm like, oh, that's funny.
Sure. Let me write the check.
Right.
Yeah, not going to happen. So, but I called the guy and I'm like, look, I think you're amazing. But we can't do this. Do you have any suggestions? And he said, well, I have a private practice in a small town outside of Nashville. I'd be willing to just see him if he's willing to come all the way down here. And so the crazy story is Paul lived all over the place as a kid, all over the country because of his dad's job. And he has one little town in Tennessee that he has just amazing fond memories and great childhood, like warm memories and good stuff, good mojo, whatever. And it's this town. Where
Wow.
Yeah. And he has people he can stay with that were his neighbors when he was little. And anyway, so we were just like, okay, we'll just try it. It sounds nuts, but we'll try it. We didn't know anything about EMDR. We didn't know what that was. We didn't know this guy practiced it. We just went and instantly it was like, this is the guy. Like, I can't even tell you, he was just amazing. And then I don't think the EMDR thing came up for maybe a couple sessions. He brought it up and said, well, I do this thing. I think it might be helpful. And we were like, oh, that sounds kind of creepy. Like, we had never heard of it. And so isn't that a crazy story?
That is crazy.
Yeah,
so he
like
drives from Indiana to Tennessee.
For sure. We love this guy. And it's just a reason to go down there because we love it down there.
Yeah.
It's a fun place.
So,
Wow.
I don't know if that's really a takeaway.
I know, right?
So have a friend who calls you from God's ordained.
Can't help you there.
Right.
One of the cool things, though, about having it be out of town is then you've got that time to process on the way home because we did see people in town and it's so hard. I think any of you who have been in a therapy session, right? You go deep and it's intense and you've got all the feelings and then you get in the car and 5 minutes later you're at your house with your
You're
kids.
like, so Applebee's?
Oh, right. It's so awkward and I'm
Right.
terrible at shifting gears like that in general. And so I love the fact that you can go down there and then just have time to process.
That's great.
It's good stuff. So anyway.
So thankful you found that.
Yeah. Love it.
And that you were willing to listen and willing to take that leap.
I think the word is desperate, honestly. Like,
That's true.
Right.
you just get to the point where you're desperate. I would have drank a magic potion if someone said that was going to fix things. Like, you just do what you have to do.
So I'm glad that you were able to not really find your magic potion, but you were able to find something that was able to help you take that next step along your journey.
Yeah. And you said, well, we're not going to say like find a God ordained person. I mean, that's not a formulaic way to get forward, but the person that connected you to that therapist was someone in your corner, someone trustworthy, someone in your village, which is really something through this whole podcast. Every story has to do with that. You need a village. Like,
Absolutely.
you got to have those people.
You got to have the village.
Show up. It wasn't some random,
Wasn't Google
on a street corner, although stranger things have maybe happened. So it is so important to find community so that at those times when you are desperate, someone else can kind of shoulder that burden with you or for you or kind of help you, like take your hand and say, let's try this next step. Sometimes you just can't do it yourself.
Absolutely. And to be totally honest, when it first started, and again, I didn't even realize what was happening at the beginning, but I wasn't talking about it. Like, I was literally showing up at church we were in a co-op at the time doing homeschool, and I was showing up with a smile on my face every day and then getting in my car and crying the whole way home. So you have to be willing at some point to talk about it,
right?
To take that really hard step of opening up with people.
Right.
And so
Could people tell what was going on?
Oh, no.
Or did you just really keep
performer.
up that? Okay.
Yeah.
Until I don't remember exactly at what point. But yes, at some point, I think, to go back to what we said earlier, the word desperate, like you do reach a point where you do get desperate. And so I did open up at some point and start talking to people about it and saying, and again, I think this was before we even knew what was going on. I was just saying something is wrong with my husband. Like something is not right.
Right.
And so, yeah.
And when you did open up, where were some of those safe spaces other than the therapist that you first opened up, and how was that received?
Right. I think that people don't know what to do with it unless they've been through it themselves or they have someone close to them. I think people sometimes just don't know what to do with you. They don't know how to respond. And so there definitely were people that rallied. There were friends that did rally, but there were a lot of people who just kind of listened and then never checked back in on us, which I look back and I'm like, wait, what happened there? You know, I think that, like we said earlier, I think people are ill-equipped to know what to do. I think many churches are ill-equipped to know how to surround families that are going through that kind of crisis. It's so different, like I said, than family that's going through cancer or something more visible or more, what's the word? More tangible? I don't even know.
Yeah. Or just, like they just had surgery and they can't physically get out of bed. So we're going to help them.
Exactly.
Yeah. And you say visible because you can spot it under a microscope or physically you can find a way to be like, and there is the disease.
Yep.
But that's definitely not the case with mental illness.
Yeah. I think it's getting better.
Yeah.
Slowly.
Yeah. Are you still plugged in? I know you said you had a beef with the church because of that. Do you feel like as it gets better and as you've found your own personal healing in your family, you know, you're able to kind of move past that and see the gift of community within the church now?
Yeah, for sure. And I think there's a lot of grace too, because like I said, I've looked back at how I handled that kind of stuff before we went through this. And I'm sure that I was in that camp of not responding well because I didn't know what to do. So there's a lot of grace for sure. But I also think as we've moved into a season of healing, we've come alongside several couples and people that we know going through it. Paul's, really open about it and he talks about it to his clients sometime when he meets people that have struggled with it. Like he's really open. And I love that he is at a point of that's something we can talk about now and come alongside other people and make them not feel so alone. Because it is such a lonely place to be.
Yeah.
Such a lonely place.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah. It kind of makes me think on a slightly lighter note of times where I can remember friends that had kids before I did, and they'd be talking about how hard it was to figure out the pumping or the nursing or whatever part it was. Like they're just not sleeping, and you hear it before you're a parent, and you feel for them, but you don't get it at all. And after we started having kids, I remember wanting to apologize to so many friends. And then my sister is 8 years younger than me, and she actually, I can remember early on when she had a baby, she was like, I just feel like I was never on time to anything, and I never understood like what you guys were juggling. But we're not, like you said, there's grace because we're not supposed to fully understand that. And how can we? So it's good to have grace all around, I guess.
Yep, for sure.
Well, Jen, thank you so much for coming and chatting with us and sharing your story. Hopefully your story is going to touch somebody else and maybe give them the courage to speak up and say, look, we need some help.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I always feel like, have you ever seen Ellen's stand-up Here and Now when she talks about the newscasters and how they have to go from like, in the plane crash and now find out
74
what's
degrees
for
and sunny.
dinner.
Right.
Yeah, I feel like that's what I'm about to do by introducing the mom seat after a pretty heavy topic. So
go for it.
Give me some grace as well. But we're going to end on the mom seat here.
Yeah.
And as you know, we read off a list of answers and you get to pick one.
Love it.
And here we go.
Let's do it.
Disposable or cloth?
Disposable, baby.
Bottle or breast?
Oh, I was bad at both.
Did your babies eat?
I was a very bad cow. So we're going to say bottle.
Okay. Pinterest mom or Amazon Prime mom?
Oh, Amazon Prime all the way.
Jeans or yoga pants?
Jeans.
Top knot or ponytail?
Pony.
Home birth or hospital?
Hospital.
Chore chart or managing chaos?
Chaos.
Gender reveal or find out when it pops out?
Gender reveal.
Instagram or Facebook?
Insta.
Homemade or store-bought?
Store-bought.
Lullabies or sound machine?
Ooh. I would say lullabies.
Five.
Sarah CD.
Ooh, plug. Hey.
Spotify.
5 servings of veggies per day or per month?
Oh, per day. I'm good about veggies.
Ooh, good job.
President of the PTA or I'll send in some goldfish?
Goldfish.
Bubble bath and a good book or girls' night out?
Ooh, I love both of those things. Do I have to pick one?
Yes.
I say no, you don't.
Depends on the day. I love them both.
Okay. Weekly meal plan or McDonald's drive-thru?
That's a tough one because I hate Mickey D's, but I do not meal plan. So I can't. I know.
Yeah.
You're
I don't
killing
know
me.
if we can be friends
Okay, we'll
anymore
say
if
I
you
know.
don't like McDonald's.
You're such a robot, Julie.
What?
Only one or the other?
No, I'm saying if she doesn't like McDonald's.
You're killing the 4 in me right now, right? You realize
Yeah.
that?
Okay.
Boxing me in.
Fours unite.
Homeschool or go to school?
Homeschool.
In your home, free bird or robed up?
Oh, roped up.
Favorite parenting resource?
Oh, Google.
And favorite place to buy kids' clothes?
eBay.
That's
Ooh.
the mom seat.
I'm so sorry. I didn't even know eBay was still a thing.
I refuse to pay full price for kids' clothes. Garage sale,
Yay.
eBay,
Yeah.
Facebook
awesome.
boards, whatever.
Awesome.
Our local expert is Laura Fair on eBay. She used to do that.
Oh, that's right.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Juniper Street, is that what it was?
I think so.
Hey, Juniper Street.
Yep. Yep. Jen, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. And I know I've known you a little longer than Julie, so a little bit more of a pleasure for me than for her.
Goodness.
Thank
Stop
you,
it.
guys.
Stop it. We're
I
gonna
love you both.
fight after the show.
Yes, we will link to all the things that we've talked about and send you on your way with many blessings. And so glad that you guys have found some peace in your family.
Thanks.
Thanks, Jen. Well, we hope you will come back next week on the Momnesia podcast, where we're going to share more stories before Momnesia sets in and we forget it all. Have a great week.
Bye-bye. Today's episode of Momnesia was recorded at Grace Church in Noblesville, Indiana, with original music by Phil Larson. Make sure to check out Grace's podcast Between Sundays and Phil's music on Spotify.